Hi everybody, today I am at Yuanming Yuan, which is the old summer palace. It was a holiday resort and it was the residence of a lot of the emperors of the Qing dynasty. And it was famously burnt down by the British and the French as punishment for the Second Opium War, or otherwise known as the Arrow War. So here we go, let's go check it out. So we're at Qianlong, which is part of the Yuanming Yuan, or the old summer palace. And if you look behind me, what you can see is a whole bunch of ruins. And these ruins come from the old palace. This is where the emperors, especially Qianlong, this is where they lived, where they came to enjoy their leisure time. And it was filled with all of these treasures from the Chinese civilization. Well, in 1856, you had what was called the Second Opium War, or the Arrow War. The British boat was suspected of piracy by the Chinese government, and Chinese Marines arrested 12 of the 14 crew. The British took offense to it, and they began to bomb some ports in Canton. And then the French joined in. Later on, you also had the Americans and the Russians join in the war, but by 1858, the Chinese government wanted to end the war, and they ended up signing the Treaty of Tianjin and the Treaty of Aigun. That effectively sort of ended hostilities, but there was a lot of internal squabbling within the Qing government about whether or not they should be signing these unequal treaties with the West. And so there were forces within the Qing government that perpetuated a state of hostilities between the British and the French. And so by 1860, the British and the French decided that they were going to march into the capital, and they came right into Yuanming Yuan, and they pillaged it on October 6th, 1860. They finally burnt it to the ground on October 18th, 1860. Now, in 1899, you had the Boxer Rebellion, which were some Taoist fighters that came about and wanted to exile foreign influence from Chinese politics. And they were secretly supported by the Qing, but basically they drew attention from all of the Western forces that had interests in China, and there were about 8 nations that came together to attack China again, and they came here and they pillaged once again the summer palace and burnt it to the ground. And so this was pretty much the peak of what's known as China's century of humiliation, and today stands as a symbol of foreign aggression towards China. They have a maze here going through the gazebo, or going up to the gazebo, so we're trying to figure out our way. I don't think it's too hard, but I don't know, we'll find out. I'm lost. I can't figure it out. Oh, I think I found a possibility. Uh-oh, I think this might be another dead end. Oh, I think, yeah. I'm impressed with myself now. Oh, I think I've got it. Frustrating. I just want to sit in the gazebo. Hey. Oh, voila. We've made it. There we go. Now we're trying to get out of the maze. It's just as hard as it was getting in. Man, they just must have had more time back then.
Yeah, this is probably why the dynasty declined. The emperors lost back here for days.
Couldn't make it out of the maze. Alright, so I'm here in front of Haiyantang, and basically we're seeing the residential buildings built by Qianlong. So during Qianlong's time, this area became the official residence of the imperial family. Of course, official business was still conducted in the Forbidden City, but this was basically where they lived, where their concubines lived, where their extended family lived, where they relaxed. Unlike most Chinese architecture, which is all made of wood, this has a distinctly European style to it. It's all made of marble, it's all made of stone. And it has things like fountains, things like insignias, things that you would almost find in sort of Renaissance France or something like that. And when you look at the time period in which this is done, this particular edifice was built in 1759. A couple of the other ones that we looked at over there were built in 1751. What makes this so ironic is that later on in 1793, when Lord Macartney would come and visit Qianlong bearing a letter from King George, Qianlong would famously reject that letter, basically saying that China needed nothing from the West and that China had everything it already needed right here, and that trade with the rest would have been ultimately not in China's best interest. And I find that really interesting because he was obviously very influenced by Western styles and by European culture at the time. Of course, by 1793, China had begun to be weakened and they had started to feel the negative impacts of interaction with the West, particularly the negative impacts of having European traders in Hong Kong selling opium, and of having European delegates come into the capital and start to request equal relations with the Son of Heaven, or the Celestial Emperor. And this was definitely something that Qianlong thought was a degradation to the Chinese self-perception of being the center of all under heaven. So again, you can see behind me the ruins of a European-style edifice built during the reign of Qianlong. And it sort of represents this sort of fusion. Before you had conflict between China and the West, you seem to have a relationship of mutual benefit where China was obviously adopting things from the West and using it to serve their royal families, their imperial families, and build lavish buildings and lavish residences for them. What's interesting too is that this is probably one of the only ruins in China that I've been to that hasn't been restored in some way. Almost every other temple or relic that exists or existed throughout Chinese history has been restored pretty much to the way they at least picture it being now, except for this one. This Yuanming Yuan hasn't been. It's been left in ruins, and it's almost a marker or a memorial of the inability for China and the West to fuse and to integrate cultures and to become one with each other. And it's more of a sort of reminder that there was always conflict, that China tried Western stuff and it ended in destruction and mayhem. And this is sort of a memorial to that. All right, so that about brings us to the end of our visit to Yuanming Yuan. It was really cool. I enjoyed it a lot. If you enjoyed it, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or any comments, please put them in the comment section below. I will see you guys in the next video.